I always have my students listen to João Gilberto for bossa nova music. He's a great guitar player and singer. However, his drummers never played. He never wanted that, you know, because he played with such delicacy, you know. But there are lots of Brazilian, you know, you can go from that into listening to a lot of Brazilian music where that's done. You know, while we're on this subject, let me just show you a couple of ways, you know, to play bossa nova that I've used a lot and I like a lot. I played with the guitar player named Charlie Bird, who helped introduce the bossa nova to the United States along with many other people. But so I played with him for a long time, and I had to play bossa novas every night, like maybe 12 or 15 bossa nova tunes. So I didn't want to just play the same thing on every song. I had to find different ways. So I listened to Brazilian drummers and I talked to Brazilian drummers. So anyway, this is, again, you know, it's the basic thing. So then I started stealing from, researching from other people. And so one of the ways I listened to a great drummer named Grady Tate, who played on many records, you know, maybe hundreds of recordings. And he did something that he probably researched from Brazilian drummers, which he listened to them play, the way they played the brush and the way they played shakers and things like that. And I really loved what he did. He actually put his right hand on the tom-tom up here, and he played something that sounded like this. Constant bass drum. Let me go back to the bass drum just for a second for you. I've had Brazilian drummers tell me, do you know Duduca da Fonseca? Yeah, and he's a great guy, you know, and great drummer. But he talks about, and Airto, another great Brazilian drummer, always talked about like trying to keep those, well, Airto talked about accenting the first of those two notes. Forget it, I can't do that really in the context of playing, you know. I just never developed that, you know. But the Duca talks about keeping them both uniform, rather than, which is kind of a tendency that American drummers tend to do because we're used to playing. It's always about, you know, when you play rock music because it's straight eighth notes, but it's a different feel altogether. You know, that the Brazilian thing is so, it's so smooth and so even, you know, and then let the accents come up on the syncopated beats usually, you know, for the most part, or on beats. If you're thinking of it in two, one and a two, you know, accenting two, you know. Okay, I'm just zipping through this little thing about Brazilian drumming because I think it's very interesting. So anyway, but I continue to work on trying to even those two notes out. With some success. So another beat that I learned from the Duca is something that another drummer, Paulo Braga, I think started to develop in the maybe in the 1970s, you know, back when you were all very young. Anyway, it's like a more smooth way of doing this. Actually, when I think back, I've heard some João Gilberto recordings from even the late 50s where people were doing this, but it's very simple. 8 notes with the right hand. With the left hand, just playing 8 notes, sliding. To get that left hand going, one of the really one of the easy ways to think about it, I think, is just to think about quarter notes. Just think about playing 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and then the 8 notes make themselves. And a really effective thing to do, super simple, really effective, if you're playing like a real slow bossa, and the percussion should be not very intrusive. Start the first part of the tune like this with no hi-hat, or actually you could play the hi-hat on like beats 3, or just on beat 3, like. Okay, do that for a while. Then maybe the middle part of the tune comes along and it gets a little more complex harmonically. Then you bring it in on 2 and 4. And it's amazing, that's so simple, but it's amazing how that kind of gives it a real lift. You know, it's almost like you're adding a rhythm guitar or something. So one other way that I started doing when I was with Charlie Bird that a lot of early bossa people would do is slide the right hand. That's really effective too, you know, and so you can do it with both brushes. Okay, so that's a little bossa nova. Oh, one other thing, I show this because I haven't heard many people do this. Todd probably does it because he does everything. But I took the E flat, who cares? Yes. Anyway, but I took that Grady Tate thing that I showed you, the drummer Grady Tate that did it, and I started developing that with my left hand. Pretty good at doing it like at slower tempos, so I could put my right hand over here like. So then I thought, how could I bring that down even quieter, like during a bass solo? So I turned the brush over and I started doing it on the hi-hat like this. So I think that's mine. I mean, obviously it came from this thing, but I've heard Adam Nussbaum do the opposite. He plays like 2, 3, 4. But I heard him do that long after I started doing it, so he developed that independently, I think, you know, or I did, you know. But I like, for Brazilian music, I like it the other way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. You know, it's kind of a nice little intimate, quiet way of doing it. So. Anyway, that's enough about bossa nova right now. Let's get back to some of the other questions.